So this morning's session, as you would have seen on your invitation, first of all, welcome. My name is Samantha Allen, and I am in charge of marketing and communication for the English-speaking region with Intcomex, working alongside with Microsoft. Now, as you saw on this morning's invitation, we'll be discussing how to protect contacts, data, infrastructure using Microsoft security. And some of the topics we'll touch on is security with M365. We'll also touch Microsoft Defender, backup, and disaster recovery. And on hand are my teammates, Dalean Barnett, who is a solutions architect here at Intcomex Jamaica, and Ayrton Salmon, who is also a solutions architect specializing in modern workplace, and Dalean specializes in Azure. Now I'll be handing over to Ayrton as he starts the presentation, and feel free to put your questions in the chat, and I will have Ayrton and Dalean respond accordingly. All right, Ayrton, so it's over to you. Everyone, please enjoy and have a good session.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Ayrton Salmon here, Solutions Architect, Cloud, English-speaking Caribbean for Intcomex. And I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time to participate in this session. So, as my colleague had indicated, we're going to take a look at some of the security pieces or solutions, I should say, that Microsoft has made available to the community to assist or allow you to protect your workloads in the cloud. And I'm speaking from a modern workplace standpoint. So that's Office 365, Microsoft 365, anything from Microsoft that is considered software as a solution. My colleague, he will speak more to the infrastructure aspect of things. That's Dalean. So let me go ahead and start the presentation around Microsoft 365. Now I'm going to do it two ways. So the presentation that I have, it has some bits and pieces in there in terms of what the environment looks like if you have a threat and how that is mitigated. And our focus today is going to be around one part of the solution. Okay, so Microsoft 365 has what is called, there are various layers to the security platform. And in terms of advanced security, that matches up well with everything else out there in the market. And we're talking all the heavy hitters in terms of protecting Office or cloud services. In terms of software as a solution, Microsoft has a solution called Microsoft 365 Defender. Now, Microsoft 365 Defender is kind of, it's a top level grouping of other parts. There's one part that speaks to infrastructure. My colleague will touch on that. And then there are 4 parts on the Microsoft 365 side. You have what is called Defender for endpoint. You have Defender for access and identity. You have Defender for Office 365, which protects Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, and your email. That's Exchange Online. And then you have Defender for App Security, Cloud App Security for your third-party, your other applications and third-party apps protection. Now, as partners, you might say to yourself, why do we need to be focused around security? What is happening, and this is a campaign that is being pushed by Microsoft, but it's to assist you in your business and allow you to make certain things aware to your customers. As the customers go through what is called a digital transformation, more workloads are going to the cloud. Of course, going to the cloud /internet leaves room for our lovely friends out there who either help us or destroy us. Those are the hackers. And the hackers have kind of turned the game up since COVID. So COVID is not the only thing that has been hitting businesses. These hackers and unethical individuals have turned their game up, and they are pushing extremely hard to inundate a lot of the services that are now coming from the cloud space. Now, remember, Microsoft, in their modern workplace strategy, they have enterprise and they have SMB. And while enterprise is usually well covered in terms of its security needs, persons always wonder, okay, what is there for SMB? Are they the small, medium businesses protected as well as the enterprise? And the answer to that is yes, they are. But if it is that you need an advanced security, then you can start to look at what Microsoft has to offer. And you're looking at data protection while in transit or at rest, and you're looking at the privacy and security of data for the most common workloads. As everyone here knows, Teams kind of took the center stage away from Exchange Online when COVID was first announced, and persons had to move into this new remote work or new work strategy. I'm not going to say new work order because that sounds very, that sounds like something else is happening, but the new work strategy. And as IT professionals and as business owners, not sure cross-section of the persons who are on this call, but as IT owners and resellers, you know how to come up with a solution or find a solution to offer management of data and devices to your customers, allow them to do remote work in a collaborative fashion, but doing all of that securely. Because remember, no, they're not coming through this security space that has been built in a brick and mortar for the users. They're coming from whatever internet source they have at their fingertips or they have at their access. So Microsoft thought about the security strategy long before it became apparent to many others that security needed to be a critical part of everything. Now, for those who know the SMB SKUs, these are the ones that matter: basic, standard, and premium. Premium, as it suggests, offered a higher level of security and management of endpoint devices. Now, basic and standard, while they have protection built into it and security built into it, we needed to offer, as partners, we need to offer a higher level of security for these persons. And the higher level of security is what we call the Microsoft Defender for Office 365. And for persons who need to translate the monetary or cost to their customers, you're looking at $2 per user per month extra that they would need to pay. And this is an add-on SKU to your Exchange Online Plan 1, Plan 2, Basic, and to your Business Premium. The good thing about this, what this does now, is offers some automation. And let me just land on this a second. So this is where this is an add-on for it. So the previous name was Advanced Threat Protection or something like that. Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection Plan 1, Plan 2. And you're looking at the primary SKUs that SKU can be added to. So Exchange Online Plan 1, Plan 2, Kiosk, all Office 365 solutions come with Exchange Online protection. So that is there already. You can add it to Business Basic, Business Standard, E1, E3, and F3, and of course A1 and A3, right? So that means that what has this, at least the at least plan one would be the E5s and the business premium. So just remember that E5s and business premium already at least have plan one. E5 actually has plan two. What does this particular solution do for the business? So it removes a lot of the headache, a lot of the pain. And this presentation can be made available to you as partners, so you can have a complete discussion with your customer. And if it is that you require a demo to be done that looks at the Microsoft 365 Defender suite in a holistic fashion, that also can be, we can assist you with that, or we can train you to know how to do that yourself. And if you already know how to do it, you take advantage of landing this conversation around security. What does it do for the organization? It makes them aware that, yes, we understand that the cloud offers this flexibility, this scalability, and it's cost effective where it needs to be for all businesses. But we do have risk and we do have threats. But there are things that have been put in place to mitigate those risks and threats. Now, depending on your risk appetite, you can either deal with a lot of risk and maybe pay for cheaper services, or you spend a little extra and you move into the premium bracket and you get more advanced services from Microsoft, which not only deliver the solutions that you want, but also deliver it more securely than you would at a lower level SKU. So Microsoft Defender for Office 365, as I said before, is a part of a larger picture. So Microsoft 365 Defender, it includes, and I won't speak to Azure Defender, I'll leave that to my colleague to land that with you, because he, has the security on the infrastructure side. But you have, as I said, endpoint identity, cloud app security, and of course, Office 365. And the challenge that is happening is that there's so much threats coming at individuals, because while Teams has taken the limelight, email will always stand the test of time. That's a common platform for communicating in terms of your messages and sharing information. And this is the main solution that is attacked constantly. Not that the solution like Teams is not being attacked. Of course, any solution that is public facing will come under threat and will come under attacks from various sources. So what Microsoft did was come up with a solution that collectively protects majority of the communication solutions. So the email, OneDrive, and Teams is directly tied to SharePoint. So if anybody has recognized it or not recognized it, you can have in your OneDrive a single pane of glass for your user where they see their files. They have the sites, the SharePoint sites that they have access to can be seen from their OneDrive pane of glass. And of course, the groups that they are a part of in Teams can also be accessed from their OneDrive, because any group and any information in a group can be translated to a SharePoint site essentially. So Teams kind of build up from that collaborative space. And of course, there's extremely tight security built into that. You have the concept of, in terms of the E5 SKUs, you have the concept of secure documents, or safe documents, it's called. And then of course, with Defender, what Defender brings to the table is safe links and safe attachments. So where you have malicious links and attachments coming into your email or being shared via whatever method, artificial intelligence and automation from Microsoft helps to mitigate those threats. Now, it's a process. Microsoft, so Microsoft is giving, and so this is a summary. This is old data now because it's from 2019, but that's as an idea of what's happening in the landscape. And the phishing has gone up much more money has been invested to, in dealing with these threats. Much more money is lost or being lost for those persons who are unaware. So part of your strategy is now you have to go out to your client base and make them more aware of the compromise that can occur within their business. They may say to you, the normal pushback, oh, you're trying to get more money out of me. Absolutely not. What you're doing the right thing as a trusted partner. As a trusted partner, it's your job, it's your role, it is your duty to let your clients know that, listen, you have a solution now that is giving you everything that you want in terms of your mobility and your remote work, and allowing you to flex with the changes in the economy. But at the same time, it's a new way of doing business, and there are inherent risks. And I need to speak to you about those risks, and I need to tell you how you can mitigate them. Of course, the SEC admins, the system admins, they have tons of challenges. So as I said before, there's native protection with Office 365, but with Defender for Office 365, basically you bring automation and AI to it. I won't go into much more details here. What I will do is just give you a quick demo of how you access this space. So once you have the Defender, whether it's just Defender for Office 365 or you have all the other Defenders, essentially you go to security.microsoft.com. You can go to admin.microsoft.com or go to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center and then click on Security, which will take you to the Security admin panel or site. So I'm going to just log in as a SEC admin here. Just to give you a quick look at the space. So once you're logged in, you come straight to the Security and Compliance Admin Center. And in this Admin Center, it looks at everything that is happening within the organization. Time does not permit, but essentially the demo, there's a demo that we can give you. We can schedule that for another time. That speaks about a particular attack and how the system tracked everything. And because this particular client or demo client activated all the advanced security pieces, the endpoint protection, access protection, the cloud app security, and of course, Office 365. Once a threat came in, it came in on the email, but because of the nature of the threat, it had a macro built into it, which then went out and simulated, acted as if it became a bad actor essentially in the system and acted as someone else with the intention of getting to a domain admin role or global admin role. And then after getting to that level, then trying to pull, simulate authentication scripts to allow them to move freely and laterally through the business with the intention of pulling data that they think will be meaningful to the organization, and of course, getting access to all the credentials. So if it is that one credential has been compromised, they can come in at a later date with another credential. If it is that the SEC admin or the system admin did not go hunting and realize, okay, this is the situation, this individual, and this is the path they took. And of course, with Defender for Office 365 Plan 2, it allows you to do this threat hunting that I just mentioned a while ago. So when you come into this space, you can right away see the incidents that are within the business. You have the ability to do hunting, as I said before, so you can do this advanced hunting. So you'll be using queries. My colleague will land some of that in infrastructure as well. And if it is that you want to be able to take advantage, to save the logs from some of this activity, you can save it in a resource within Azure called Azure Sentinel. I'll pause it at that point, and I'll allow my colleague to pick up from there in terms of the infrastructure security aspect of things. Dalean, over to you.
Hi, Ayrton. Thank you very much. So I will touch on how we can protect our cloud infrastructure running in the Microsoft Azure public cloud in two different ways. So let me start with Azure Backup first. We'll run through protecting workloads by doing backup and disaster recovery, and then we'll look at some of the security-centric tools and services available to us. So let's just run through this quickly. So I mean, so these are some of the main reasons why you'd want to implement some sort of backup and disaster recovery solution for your data. So data security. You want to ensure that you keep those critical data safe, and also just in case anything should happen, at least you have something that you can recover from, right? So I mean, I am going to assume that everyone here assumes that that is so. All right, so Azure Backup provides a centralized management console. So that's the Azure Backup Center, and that's a managed service within Azure that allows you to look across your existing Azure Backup services, regardless of where they're running, and see what you have in place. So Azure Backup supports Azure native workloads. So if you want to Azure Backup, virtual machines, storage accounts, SQL workloads, right? You can do that. You can also back up on-premises servers, databases, applications, and also some of your workloads running in third-party clouds, right? So the Azure Backup Center gives you one pane of glass to look at what you have going on. It also supports multiple workloads. So again, right, many clouds, on-prem, Azure, and even SAP, Linux, Windows, all that fancy stuff. And in terms of durability, you can choose to replicate your data across different geographic regions to safeguard against a regional failure, right? So if you need just a little extra assurance that even if, let's say, the entire ECOS should go down, you can have access to your data. All right. And we look at Azure Site Recovery. It's a little bit different from Azure Backup because it does asynchronous replication. So you want to pair Site Recovery and Azure Backup because Site Recovery doesn't do any form of backup, right? So it's a very simple math. If you have good data, it will replicate good data. If you have bad data, it will do the same, right? But just a general look of what the Azure Site Recovery offers. Just imagine that region 1 is your, just imagine that region 2 is your on-premises data center, and region 1 is Azure. So what you do is that you would configure whatever workload you have to specifically target your environment. So that simply means that if you are running physical workloads, right? So physical Windows, Linux servers, Hyper-V, VMware, right? You can configure the Azure Site Recovery specific to that environment. And what you'd have is, if you should have, let's say, any sort of downtime, right? You can always do a manual failover, which will spin up those resources in Azure. or you can have this in an automated way using a tool like Azure Traffic Manager. Yeah, so the main point of this is that you don't have to necessarily go out and build a secondary site in a traditional manner. So that would mean, you would need to, let's say, procure any physical hardware. You would need to rent any buildings. Azure takes care of all of that, and you can build all of that on the Azure infrastructure. All right, so let's look at the security specific part of what Azure has to offer. All right, so from a security centric perspective, similar to modern workplace, Azure offers various degrees of security controls. And the first one we look at is the Azure AD identity protection. And this is really geared at protecting your user accounts. And I mean, every day we are experiencing a lot more sophisticated attacks. So simple, let's say, passwords and stuff like that, they really cannot protect against the threats that are coming your way. So Azure AD identity protection adds an additional layer on top of Azure AD, of course. So this uses ML and heuristics to detect out of the norm signals. So for example, let's say you recently signed in to your office, which is in Jamaica, right? And let's say 15 minutes later, there's a sign-in request for your account from, let's say, Miami. Now, the algorithm knows that there's no way that you can travel from Jamaica to Miami in 15 minutes, at least not yet. So of course, that is going to raise a red flag. I mean, this can be a valid request, let's say through a VPN, right? But these are some of the things that they take into consideration. And the system can automatically do things like allow you to, re-enter your MFA, or let's say change your password, or even outright block these attempts, right? And you don't have to do anything more than, configure the settings within the Microsoft Azure portal, right? So that gives you a little bit more peace of mind and a little bit more assurance that your users are protected. The next one is Azure AD Conditional Access. So I remember having a conversation with a customer, and their concern was that, all right, in Dalean, this cloud thing is cool, but hear me out. I can guarantee that my users are only signing into their Office apps when they're in the office, right? Because my resources are physical in the office. So that's, of course, that was my chance to really, show them that, all right, then, even though, let's say, your resources are running in Azure, right? You don't own them, you don't control them, but you can use Azure AD to actually allow these things to behave like that. So you can actually limit access to, let's say, your cloud resources. That's your Azure portal, that's your Microsoft 365 services, from specific public IPs. And I mean, that is just scratching the surface. Azure AD can also be integrated in things such as Microsoft Endpoint Manager, right? So, for example, you can have a policy to say that I will not admit any, let's say, incompliant devices, right? So if the devices don't meet your compliance requirements, then you can reject them and stuff like that. So as the name suggests, it is really geared at looking at various conditions that you would find and then deciding if you're going to give access based on those conditions. So the possibilities are really limitless where this is concerned. So we can definitely, have follow-up sessions if you are interested in looking into Azure AD conditional access. All right. The next one is Azure AD Privileged Identity Management, or PIM. So this solves a problem that I found that not many companies or not many orgs realized that they had. So the challenge was the sprawl of privileged accounts, and there was no way to manage and assess if these accounts were really needed. So for example, let's say you have a company and you have 10 global administrators, and 9 out of the 10, they really don't need the privilege of being a global admin. Now, what you may encounter in a situation like this is, let's say you have some sort of account compromise. Then because let's say these accounts, you know, are just there, they weren't being used, and an attacker gain access to those accounts, then they can wreak havoc in your, let's say, directory, right? So they can really do anything that they want to do. So what privileged identity management does is it really gives you a workflow to, let's say, number one, you know, have some sort of just-in-time access where, of course, these people really do need the access sometimes, but it's not 24/7, 365. So what they can do is that they can request access, and you have an identity admin who can now, you know, grant access or revoke based on reason, right? And there's this also, there is this other section where you can assess the accounts that are currently either issued, or let's say they were, you know, selected to be, you know, privileged. And during that assessment period, now you can say, all right, then, you know, this is my chance to really see if these accounts are really necessary. So it solves the problem of, you know, how are companies managing these privileged accounts, and it does this at massive scale. All right, so the next section is Azure Security Center with the Azure Defender, and very similar to Microsoft Defender, sorry. Azure Defender aims at protecting your cloud resources, but these resources are, let's say, what you'd create from an Azure perspective, right? And Azure Defender is really aimed at protecting, let's say, your virtual machines, your storage accounts, SQL databases, you know, stuff like that. So from a security perspective, what it does is it gives you, you know, different controls, and you can define what does security look like for your company. So I'm going to give you an example of this. So an example would be, let's say, adaptive network hardening. So whenever you deploy a virtual machine in Azure, then there's this concept of a network security group, and it's really like a firewall, right? A basic firewall which operates at let's say layer 4. So you can define ports, IP addresses, stuff like that. So, for example, let's say you want to give someone access to the RDP port, right? We all know that port 3389 should not be open publicly, but this is just an example. So let's say someone wants to do RDP or SSH for some sort of management. Then what you can have is through Azure Defender and the Azure Security Center portal, you can request access, And then what this will do is that this will basically punch a hole in your NSG, open that port to a specific public IP for a specified period of time, right? So you can now prevent people from actually going in and manually making changes to your network security rules, and allow the service to get this done for you. So what you won't end up with is a case where someone finishes what they're doing and then these ports are left open, right? That's just one example. Another example would be, let's say, a Docker host hardened scenario. So if you are into containers and you are building your own host and stuff like that, then what you can do is that you can implement CIS benchmarks using the Azure Security Center. So what this will essentially do is give you a list of things, from an infrastructure security perspective that you should implement, and then compares the state of that world to what it should look like. And then, that way you have these really rich reports that you can compare against and then make adjustments. Final one, this is very common in the Microsoft demos, and it's the just-in-time access to virtual machines. So again, let's say someone needs to gain access to a VM, then what you can do is that so they wouldn't need access to that virtual machine 24/7 again. So just in time, really say, all right, then I am going to request access to this VM for this specified period of time. It can modify things such as access control rules, right? It can modify ports, and everything really to be able to give access to that virtual machine resource. So I mean, I know these examples were centered around virtual machines. However, you can protect things such as Azure Kubernetes service, container registers, your web apps running on Azure App Service, your storage accounts, your SQL databases, etc. So really, just imagine a situation where even though you don't own and control the infrastructure that Azure runs, their underlying services on, Azure Security Center really gives you the ability to now define that security layer for your resources. And last but not least is login and auditing. So whether you're building an application, whether you are doing security forensics, right, logging and auditing is really crucial, because let's face it, while you're sleeping, while you're doing other things, while the application it is running, you're not monitoring the command line or the log files and stuff like that. So this logging layer that I'm going to mention now really is geared at persisting events that happened at a point in time. So out of the box, Azure enables login for some of the most basic things, of course. So anything that you do in Azure, right? If you create a resource, if you delete a resource, if you modify a resource, then Azure is going to log that, right? So under the context of your resource groups, you will have this activity log pane where you can now look and see what happened. So it will give you really, the lay of the land as to when things changed, when things were created, and so forth. So bear in mind that login enabled by Azure is only for a specified period of time. I think it's up to 3 months. If you want to, let's say, persist those logs for at an extended period of time, then you will have to put them somewhere, right? So you can put them in a log analytics workspace, right? Sentinel, right? All that fancy stuff. Other logs, for example, if you are signing in, then Azure AD will also log those sign-in requests. Again, the challenge is that these requests are only going to be persisted for a specified period of time. If you want to persist them longer, then you'd have to store them somewhere else. And Azure Monitor supports custom logging, right? So it supports platform logs, application logs, and let's say if you're deploying things on various Azure services, then it can log at that layer as well. So not only can you implement, the various security controls that are exposed by Azure, you can also really build on top of what they offered you. So most of what I just showed you now, it's really Azure's way of saying, all right, then here are some additional ways in which you can increase your security posture by leveraging, some of the security services available. So that said, I want to thank you all for listening to me. I'm going to turn over to Samantha. Samantha?
Yes, Dalean, I'm here. Thank you for your presentation. I'm seeing where Richard has a question. Go ahead, Richard.
This question is for Salman Ariton.
Hey, yes, Richard.
With the implementation of these services, Azure Defender with 365 and endpoints and stuff. For technical support, who provided this support? Would it be from Intcomex or from Microsoft, or it would be collaborative?
And when you say technical support, let me understand a little bit more about that.
Right. Say we are say I am installing a solution, right?
Right.
Whether it's from Azure or Office 365 with Defender for endpoint security.
Right.
And there are issues procuring these services.
Mm-hmm.
And I need technical support. Whom do I forward these requests to?
So as our partner, our part of our value add is that we offer assistance to you, whether you're having discussions with your client about the solution, whether you're doing a POC, a proof of concept, or you're actually deploying the solution. If it is that you require some assistance, it will either come from from our professional services pool, and that goes for both modern workplace and Azure. So you have assistance from us. If there are any technical issues with the deployment, as we know, anything can go wrong. Maybe made a misstep in a configuration, anyone made a misstep, or even the client themselves getting a little excited, possibly went into the environment, adjusted something, and it has no adjusted what the solution will look like, and we need further assistance. That can be had from the vendor itself. So our value is that we bring the vendor to the table in terms of support. We bring our services and support team to the table to assist you in your conversations, your proof of concept, your deployment, and a discovery if necessary. So I hope that helps and answers the question. Did I answer your question?
Yes, it actually stemmed from say we're doing a proof of concept.
Okay.
And the client should raise questions about turnaround time in terms of dealing with issues.
Right.
Then I would need to have somewhat of an answer to suggest that the turnaround time will be X, Y, or Z.
Right. So Dalean and myself are your first point of contact for this region, and we'll have a discussion with you, and where we see that we are out of depth, so to speak, and we need assistance either from the vendor or from our colleagues within Intcomex, we will definitely bring them to the table to assist you with your conversations and the solution. But the thing is, the earlier you bring us into the discussion, the better it is for you, because as we know, everybody know here, when you're doing a proof of concept, you don't want to try to do everything. You need to focus and highlight the things that matter to the organization that you're developing that solution for. There are always some little extra bits in there that you know can bring extra value, and you can land those as you go forward with that particular customer. But you need to highlight the things that would give merit to the value you bring to the organization. Because at the end of the day, you know, it doesn't matter how much support you have behind you. What's the value you're bringing to that particular organization in your proof of concept? So you need to narrow it down to something very specific, land it, deploy it, and once you move from that deployment, then you can have the conversation, the follow-up conversation. When do you want to move forward with this particular solution, if it is that they want to move forward with it?
Okay, understood.
Dalean, I don't know if you have anything else you want to add to that. Over to you, Samantha.
Thanks, Ayrton. Any other questions? All right, so if there are no other questions, Ayrton would like to do a demo showcasing the space for 5 minutes. We still have 9 minutes left in this session, so I hope that's okay with everyone.
Yep, it's cool.
All right, so thank you very much, Samantha. So we basically scratch the surface in terms of the space from Modern Workplace, and I'm just going to show you what the dashboard looks like when you step into the security and compliance admin center, and when you actually go into the Microsoft 365 Defender. So of course you can read all the stuff when you land in this space, and the easiest way to get here is security.microsoft.com. Okay, so of course, on the main panel, the widgets that you see here are the active incidents that are occurring day by day. You know, how many devices within your business after you've enrolled these devices, as Dalean had indicated. So your endpoint configuration manager, and of course your Active Directory will work seamlessly together to enroll these devices. And of course, then it checks for compliance based on the policies that you have effected within the organization. So your compliance policies determine, okay, I need to make sure that the devices have the latest patch. If you're using mobile devices, what is the allowable OS or version of OS that if someone is trying to access resources from the organization, it will allow. So basically, you can block, as my colleague had alluded to. You come in on a device. If the device is not compliant, it does not take you any further. So essentially, it's supposed to be trying to protect your access and identity at that point. Of course, this concept of geofencing is a possibility that you can think about as well, and how that is managed. Whether or not persons can come from kiosks, what will the business allow, what, and so you can get very granular. So you might say, okay, most persons can come from a kiosk, but if your profile is an elevated or privileged profile, you have to come from compliant devices, or you might force it to the next level and say it has to be company-owned devices, which quote unquote should be more secure than what anything else that is out there, because those are under the management of the SecAdmin, and of course the SecAdmin will be ensuring that these are patched and updated consistently, or they would have effected the policies that automate that process. Okay. Of course, you can use your endpoint configuration manager to help you with that update strategy for those devices. Okay. And of course, you're looking at here in terms of device at risk, users at risk. And of course, you can then drill down into the different users and what is actually happening. So, and one critical thing here. Now, so you see here where it speaks about the security score. Your score gets better the more compliant you are. So the more secure and compliant you are, the better your score is. Where you have a low score, it is the responsibility of the SecAdmins, the system admins, whatever your title is security analyst, to ensure that they look at the vulnerable entities or identities within the solution. And of course, we spoke about this in terms of unlocking the end-to-end visibility of the Azure Sentinel, and which is you're going to port your logs into the Sentinel. What does that do for you? Because the Sentinel allows you to maintain those logs for longer periods than what you would view from this particular site. If it is that you thought that there was a particular incident that occurred or a particular threat that you noticed and you wanted to investigate it yourself, you can port those logs and so you'd have logs up to a year, 2 years, depending on how long you want to maintain those logs. And then you can start to run your very specific queries against what is in the logs in the Sentinel and go into an advanced hunting state, which is now tracking what is actually happening. And at the end game, you can build your own policy for your organization. So while the business has these tools that are provided to you have what is called a playbooks. So once they have identified a threat, and how do they identify the threat? So there are particular indicators that are there. And of course, with the artificial intelligence, it's learning about threats all over globally. And once a threat, it has learned about a threat and how to mitigate and manage that particular threat or eliminate anything that is tied to it. This now feeds back into the database that is available to all tenants that are using the service, the advanced security service. And then there are playbooks that are linked to that in terms of what should happen. You know, should you sandbox? Should you, get rid of the profile? What needs to happen to ensure that the organization stays compliant and secure? So let's look at just an incident. Look at the incident analysis. So if we go to incidents and alerts and go to incidents, it'll show you a bunch of incidents that would have happened over some period. And remember, when I was doing my presentation, I had indicated that there's a particular attack that took place. So it started out as a phishing attack, and then of course it had a weaponized document in there. Okay. Now I'm going to pull up one of these demo incidents that is here, and we're going to just drill down into the incidents. So when you look at the incidents, it's going to give you an overview of what has happened. So there are 4 impacted devices, 7 users, how many mailboxes were impacted, and you want to sort of drill down into what exactly happened. You can take a look at the devices. You can even determine, okay, where did this attack start initially? So you're getting a picture here of all the devices that were impacted, all the users that were impacted, and of course it's maintaining some evidence. Of course, you're going to see what happened in terms of the timelines, how everything was managed, and how everything was mitigated, right? Now, if you go into the investigation and you drill down into some of the alerts that occurred with the investigation. So let me go back up one. So you got the summary page here. Sorry. Somebody has a question? Oh, somebody just came back in. Okay. So if you go to investigation and you drill down into one of the investigations, so for example, the malicious file investigation, you would get what is called an investigation map. So it gives you an idea, okay, when a particular incident happened, it impacted this particular mailbox, right? And of course, then speaks to the entities that were analyzed, what happened when this occurred, right? And you can get down into the actual evidence of it. You click on mailbox, the actual mailbox that was impacted. You can get some more summary on that. You can get some details on that specific mailbox if you wish. You can look at the evidence that came out of it. You can get some more details on that evidence. And as I indicated, if you wanted to, you could go hunting yourself. So the playbooks would have figured out what to do with a particular incident that occurred. But if you wanted to understand exactly what happened, you can start to run some queries now when you move into the hunt state to understand what actually occurred. If you wanted to, you could go into the mailbox itself and gather some more information. You could use some predefined queries that are here, and you build from those queries and drill down into the actual situation itself and get some information back. Now, the same hunting practice that you're seeing here, so you can use in Azure Sentinel. There are various tools that you can use to do the query itself, and Microsoft has all the documentation on docs.microsoft.com to assist you with that. But if you need further assistance from the team, as we said before, we're here to assist you. Right? So let's take it back to home incidents. And let's drill back down into that incident again. So when you're looking at it, what happened during this whole process is that it impacted Barbara's account first. Then it went and grabbed a domain admin. So all of that, you could, in the play-by-play situation that occurred, the system actually tracks all of that. So you can see what happened play-by-play. And just in case you think it overlooked any particular thing, you can go to the different stages, get the evidence that is there, and go hunting yourself to see if there was by chance anything else that was possibly overlooked that was not managed by the Defender solution, that you yourself want to ensure that you create an alert or you create a policy around it to mitigate anything that could happen in the system. Of course, Eric was a domain admin and Roberto was actually a global admin. So it went from Barbara to Erica to Roberto. And these are all the mailboxes that were impacted. And it actually grabbed the credentials from Roberto. After it grabbed Roberto's credentials, so it can take you into the mailbox and see what exactly happened through the Explorer. You can drill down. Hello?
Business Premium.
Is there a question?
They have Business Premium, right?
Sorry, not hearing you, Gerald.
It's I don't know if they're using it, but it'd be good if we could find out, what they use it. It's very, it's very, very effective.
Okay, it's a low chatter. I'm not sure what's happening there. Okay, right. So you can actually see what happened with that particular mailboxes, the different links, URLs that are there, top targeted users. So you can get an idea to see if, like Roberto's email box, once the person managed to take control of Roberto's profile or mimic his profile or use his profile to create one for him or herself, then, what sort of actions were occurring in the mailbox? It was that same mail, that weaponized mail, then sent from Roberto's mailbox to any other person within the organization to try to gather information, or was there something new that was also sent? I'm showing you all of this, and with the Defender, along with the threat tracker, so you can track all of that threat and see what is actually happening. There's also this thing called the attack simulator. Now, as IT professionals, you sometimes spend a lot of time and a lot of discussion with the users within an organization, trying to let them understand why they should not click on certain links, or be careful when they're clicking on certain links. This attack simulator with the Defender for Office 365 Plan 2 allows you to create simulated situations, safe simulated situations that then hopefully increases the awareness of the particular user. So they'll get a mail like it's coming from some external party, and if they don't recognize certain idiosyncrasies about the mail, once they click on a link or attachment, it will fire off a response to them saying, look, you've just received a malicious mail. Take note of key things within the email and may want to speak to someone in IT if you wish to make you more aware of what is happening, make you aware of what is happening and how to handle these situations. All right, so as I said before, we can do a more detailed demo around this whole security piece. Please request that demo with for your team, individual team, or on our next presentation. You may just see the full thing. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for joining us today.